That's a good intro.
It is a good intro. Fuck yeah. Welcome everybody, Guns for Everyone podcast, or whatever the fuck we call it nowadays. This is episode something.
I was just thinking about that the other day. We haven't numbered our episodes in quite a while.
I do it in Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
but even that I don't even remember what fucking number we're on.
Yeah, I don't know where we're at in Spotify. I mean, as far as episode numbers, I do know how to find us. By the way, if you didn't know, you can find us on Spotify and listen instead of having to watch us make faces at ourselves the whole time. So I am Isaac Chase.
And I am Edgar Antillon.
Santo de Edgar.
A saint of Edgar?
Well, see, I said Santo Edgar yesterday, and then somebody said Santo de Edgar. No, I don't know what I'm doing, so...
Santo Edgar would be Saint Edgar.
Okay.
Santo de is saint of.
So I lit the candle yesterday. Because we finally had a miracle that I felt like I could light the candle for. So for those of you who don't know, I have a YouTube channel that's Guns for Everyone YouTube channel, but it's my YouTube channel. And I put out a video yesterday to celebrate the miracle that one of the sheriff's departments actually took some constructive feedback and adjusted their requirements to match what the law says. It's not the first time that's ever happened, but it is unusual.
Yeah.
And so Pueblo County tried to require a class syllabus for their instructor verification program. And I submitted my application without one. And the lady at the clerk's office, she was very proactive, reached out, contacted me, told me what they required. I told her, no, I'm not doing that. And then sent an explanation of why I wasn't going to do that over email. And she sent a response back pretty quickly saying, we're going to check into this. And then yesterday she called me to tell me that my verification had been approved without the syllabus. And Pueblo County has updated their concealed carry verification, instructor verification website to say that the syllabus is preferred, but not required.
Not required.
So good news yesterday.
Yay.
Bad news today.
Bad news today. But I do want to kind of highlight the. You're shaking like a motherfucker.
I know,
You're giving me fucking vertigo.
Giving myself vertigo. Let me try to fix this. That's what I get for trying to do something new.
But it kind of highlights this ability for us to resist and push back a little bit. Sure, we're not going to win all of them, and not everything's going to be a victory, but this goes for students, and you're going to talk about what happened today, I think, and this goes for students. We've had plenty of students. I know I had one a few years ago up in Summit County who kind of did the same thing. Summit County said this. I think it was Summit County, and he fought it. After he contacted us, he said, yep, they changed their tune. They updated their website. And this was for refreshers. With the old law, the old training requirements in the state of Colorado, it did not require a refresher course. And he was kind of confused as to why they were requiring him. And he pushed back. And he said, yep, they changed it on their website, the whole nine. So like you pushing back is a positive thing. It's a good thing. You shouldn't be afraid of doing that shit. If the sheriff says something and you look up at the law and you in your gut, no, worst case scenario, you're wrong and you'll figure it all out. But it's always good to question the government. It's good to question everyone. But
yeah, so we also had a student a few months ago who did a similar thing in his county, and I'm struggling to remember which county it was, but no, this was before.
Before all.
Yeah.
That.
I can't remember what county it was, and I want to remember because I want to give the county their due for resolving the issue the way they did. But essentially, they had put up a notice at the concealed carry office saying that they were requiring the new stuff. And he went in there and talked to them and questioned them, and there was some confusion. But he was very proactive about communicating with the sheriff's department and communicating with us and giving us the opportunity to see how we could try to help and fix things, but also not waiting around for us to do everything for him. And got the answer resolved. The sheriff's department adjusted their policy, adjusted the information they were giving out about their policy, and we got the whole thing taken care of. It took a couple of days, and I don't mind reaching out and helping people, but at the same time, like, it's not my permit, it's your permit. Like, you're the one that's responsible for yourself first and foremost, and that's what we want to see from the students, is that they're willing to do what they can to help themselves get through this process, a process that I agree you shouldn't have to go through in the first place, but we can't do everything, and nor should we try to do everything for you when there's things that you should be doing for yourself. So,
yeah, and it's kind of shitty for us to say it that way, but it's also true. Like, we could only help so much, right? And this is true for RMGO. This is true for any other organization out there. We hear this constantly as like, oh, how come RMGO isn't doing this? How come Guns for Everyone isn't? How come somebody isn't doing something? I was like, well, you're somebody. You qualify as somebody. So it starts with you.
Yeah. So in La Plata County, we found out today through somebody who had been to one of Edgar's classes that they are requiring the new instructor verification right now, which is technically what the law says. So it sucks because so many counties are not enforcing the new law until July 1st, but it sounds like La Plata County is. And on top of that, they are requiring that if you take a class, it must be with a instructor who's verified within La Plata County, not just any instructor who's been verified by the sheriff's department, which we think is a misinterpretation of the law. Obviously, they don't think that. So we're going to reach out to them with our attorney to try to convince them that they're wrong about that. But unfortunately, this ends up affecting the person who wants to protect themselves, who wants to carry the gun. So, we can talk all day long about, like, oh, we argued with the government and we won here and we won there, we lost here. But ultimately, this affects the people in those counties who are just trying to meet some stupid, arbitrary system to exercise their right to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I know we're correct on this. La Plata is 100% incorrect. You only have to be verified as an instructor in the jurisdiction that your principal training takes place.
And why would they include the word principal if they didn't mean most of the training? Like, what is the purpose of including the word principal if there wasn't some interpretation of that not all training is going to take place in that county?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's asking dum-dums and idiots and morons to explain why they're morons, and I don't know. This is one of the things where we could have asked in committee, but we were focused on other things that were more pressing at the issue and at the time. And yeah, it doesn't make sense. It makes things very confusing, but the spirit of the law is wherever you are, your headquarters are at, or what have you, that's where you apply as an instructor. That's where you get verified. Once you're verified, that is your state level verification. It's not that you have to get verified in each and every county. That'd be ridiculous if we had to pay in every single county their fee and then have 64 fucking verifications. That'd be batshit crazy. I was one of the very few that was on board with having this the CBI take over this whole process for this very reason. I want the government to not have control over this process. Let's make that fucking clear. I don't think this process should exist in any way, shape, or form. You shouldn't have to get a permit. You're an adult. Your actions should be punished, not you carrying a gun. That's not a bad thing. You do dumb shit, whatever, right? There's rules for that. But when people heard that this was moving from the sheriffs to the state to the CBI, everybody was like, "No, we shouldn't have that." I was like, That's actually better." And this is an example of why. Now it's 64 different fucking idiots trying to figure out what idiots wrote on a piece of paper. So idiots trying to interpret what idiots wrote instead of just one CBI. Because now we have to fight 64 people instead of just one centralized area.
Actually, it's more like 128 people, because it's always going to be first you got to deal with the clerk, then the sheriff, and that's if you're lucky.
And then the undersheriff.
Right. The undersheriff, the deputy in charge of this program, and I'm not shitting on the clerks. Usually the clerks are more helpful than anybody else in the office. I'm just saying it's that many more people you got to deal with. So, yeah, it's completely arbitrary, and that's the ultimate result of the positive law idea. The positive law idea meaning that you have to ask for permission to do something rather than just doing the things that you should be allowed to do and being in trouble for the things that hurt people. So carrying a gun around in public does not hurt anybody.
Correct.
Using the gun in public potentially can hurt somebody.
Correct.
So we should look very closely at your use of the gun and decide when it's justified and when it's not. But positive law is the idea that everything you do, you have to justify it legally.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, because there's always a way to look at it where it's not justified.
It's absolutely dumb. I'm an anarchist, so if for those of you guys that are new to this stuff, I don't believe the government has a place. Period. End of story. But I understand and I accept that we live in a society where it's a thing. So we kind of have to work within those boundaries, and the best we could do is fight it as much as we possibly can. And speaking to the arbitrary thing, unless you had other shit to say,
no, go for
it. A prime example on how fucking stupid all of this is. I did a class yesterday. And I think most of the students there were prepared to take a test. Every single one of them was taking notes, and I've never had a class where every fucking buddy was taking notes. And everybody was taking notes, and it got to a point where one person asked a question, and the question was, "Okay, is this how it's going to be on the test?" I was like, I know, just write it down however you want to write it down. He's like, no, but I want to know how the test is going to ask for it, so I know how to answer in the test. So this is a prime example on how when you do standardized testing and you have this threshold that people ought to meet, government mandated shit, nobody's going to take the test seriously. People just want to know how to answer the question, so that they can answer the fucking question and they don't fail. That's it. They're not interested in actually learning. They're not interested. So I had to set this different standard. Like, no, that's who gives a fuck on how you write it down. That's not what the fuck we're gonna do. Because if all you're worried about is words and regurgitating, then you're not really understanding why we're saying the shit that we're doing.
Right. Otherwise, it is just words. And this is basically the idea that if you went to the class and you heard everything and you can repeat it, then you are qualified.
You're qualified.
And so, in the last episode, I think we did, or maybe it was the one before, I was talking about how I have trouble getting people to ask questions, and I'm wondering what I'm doing wrong if I can't get people to ask questions. And Gun Websites jumped on, and he posted a bunch of things you could say to try to solicit questions. And one of the things he said is, to ask the students, if you had to explain this to somebody, what I just said, if you had to explain it to somebody, what would be the hardest part for you to relate to another person? Like if you had to teach it. And so I asked the question in the class, and this guy goes, well, I guess, because I was talking about safety, and he said, I guess the hard part for me would be to repeat exactly what you said to somebody else. Which, it's funny, but he was the only one to speak up. So I got to give him credit for being the one to just like put himself out there.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't understand what I was asking, at least he spoke up, and that gave us the chance to say that. And I told him, I was like, well, first and foremost, I've done this hundreds of times. I don't think I've done it the exact same way twice.
Yeah.
So it's not about the words I'm saying, it's about understanding the meaning of what I'm saying, the concept. And then if you can apply it, then you should be able to explain it to somebody using completely different words, but still be able to say the same thing.
Correct.
Or relate the same idea.
Correct.
So, and that's it's funny, but at the same time, it kind of demonstrates the idea that learning happens through memorization, which is not how learning happens.
No.
And also, it demonstrates that somebody's got to be willing to be the idiot to get the ball rolling on the conversation. And so a lot of people are like, well, I don't even understand the question, so I'm just going to sit here and not answer. And it's like, well, if you don't understand the question, you're the perfect person to try to answer so that I can figure out where the gap is. Because if you don't understand the question, then some of that's got to be on me that I didn't explain it right.
Correct.
And so that's, I think, really important for people to understand in the learning environment. Everybody has to be willing to put themselves out there. The instructor has to do that, and the students have to be able to do that.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. Fuck, I didn't put us on Facebook. Yeah.
Oh no. What have you done?
What have you done? That's where we probably get the least engagement. So whatever.
So speaking of feedback, I've been spending more time on Reddit. This is the exact opposite of what I wanted to happen when you decided to create the subreddit. Is now I've gotten sucked into the nonsense of being on Reddit, and I try to justify it to myself by saying, "Well, I'm getting the word out there," but that's not a good reason, and it's not even really what's happening. So, somebody posted on a completely different subreddit. That they're looking for a gun store that's LGBT friendly.
Okay.
And I basically just put it out there, most gun shops don't care about that at all.
Correct.
If you walk in there and you say, hey, I'm looking for this kind of gun, you're going to get helped, and they're going to sell you a gun, and it's a completely normal interaction.
Yeah.
It's basically what I said. And most people agreed with me, but one guy was like, that's not true. And I was like, how is it not true? And he went on to say that he had been to every gun store between Wyoming and Southern Colorado. And his experience is that it's all hateful, racist bigots up and down at every gun store. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that's true. And he's like, and I even took a class with Guns for Everyone. And the instructor couldn't stop with the right wing talking points. And I was like, I don't think that's true. I basically said, tell me what happened. And he said, I can tell you're being, dismissive. And I'm going to go ahead. If you really want to hear about it, I'll go ahead and leave a negative review on Google reviews. And I was like, no, man, I'm not being dismissive. I really want to hear. And then that was the end of the conversation. But this person definitely, I don't know this for sure, but I do know this for sure. Didn't say anything in the class.
Correct.
Took the certificate, used it to get his concealed carry permit, and didn't donate.
Correct.
But wants to talk shit on Reddit anonymously.
Well, and here's the thing. Anybody who knows me is and just go to our fucking Facebook, go to Twitter, go wherever. In fact, very rarely will you find us posting, we support this candidate, we support that candidate. Very rarely. I don't think we ever have, to be honest with you.
I can't remember doing it.
Ever. Because that's not what we do. Also, we have posted plenty of fucking times, hey, Trump's a fucking idiot for supporting this shit, especially when he did the bump stock shit. And so we're very critical about both sides. And I think we've been we avoid it as much as possible because it's pointless to say Democrats hate guns and Republicans hate guns, because they all fucking hate guns, and we can prove it, right? We've sued Republicans, and in fact, the only sheriff we've sued is Republicans, and we've had to send letters to Democrats and say, hey, what the fuck, what's going on here? So like we fought both of them. So this idea that we're right wing and all that shit it couldn't be further from the fucking truth. But it's humans that don't want to interact in class that usually end up with this idea one way or another. Because I promise you that there's probably somebody in there like, this guy's a fucking flaming liberal.
Yep, probably in the same class,
in the exact same
probably
class.
with the exact same words coming out of your mouth. Probably had somebody else like, this liberal, he's yeah.
It's so weird. This is why I don't take reviews seriously. Like,
Yeah,
this is why I don't.
Yeah.
I can't take reviews anywhere seriously in any way, shape, or form. Because anybody who actually understands me and knows me and has actually paid attention in my class knows that the politics thing is, anytime it does come up, I say it very explicitly. I hate both sides. Both sides are garbage. It just, sometimes we have to mention something because somebody brought it up or whatever it is, and unfortunately it gets brought up. So I always make it a point to say, hey, I don't want to make this political. I hate both sides equally. They're all retards.
Yeah. In my classes, usually when politics comes up, I usually point back to the person and say, what have you done about it?
Yeah.
Because most people haven't really done very much.
Correct.
They are enjoying the freedoms or lack thereof, but generally speaking, they're enjoying the prosperity and the freedoms that their ancestors risked everything for, and they can't be bothered to cough up some money for the lawsuits, can't be bothered to show up and testify or contact their congresspeople or join organizations that are doing good work, because, hey man, I have a job. like your ancestors didn't have jobs too. They were just sitting around waiting to give their lives and their freedom for what they believed in. They're like, I got nothing else better to do, no job. So, and I'm not like saying that I'm like this paragon of standing up for your rights. I make it a point to just ask people, like, if you're going to complain about it, what have you done? If you're going to take the time to bitch about it, think about the engagement you've had. I got into an argument with somebody on my YouTube comments about this because I put out a video about the new safe storage law, and basically he was like, this is what you get for voting this way. So I started asking him, like, what have you done? And he just got more and more defensive about it. And I said, and all the time you've been spending bitching and complaining, you could have just sent $10 to one of the organizations that are fighting. And then he continued to bitch about it. I have a lot more that I could do. I know that, but I'm not going to sit there and listen to somebody, shit on the work that I'm trying to do when they haven't done anything. So, speaking of, there's a new Second Amendment organization in Colorado called We the Second. I don't know anything about We the Second. So why don't we talk about it?
All right. So here's the thing. Ava's dope. I think Ava overall is cool. Leslie Hollywood is also cool. What I didn't like is the way they sprung up and kind of out of nowhere. They said they were going to start a PAC, and I think that's their intention.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of the very first major podcasts that they went on, and I only know because she posted it, and she starts saying that they're the only ones that exist in Colorado, and that's what I don't. That's what I don't like.
Hmm.
That there's no other organization fighting for 2A in Colorado. I almost made a comment when she posted. I was like, "What the fuck? What about RMGO and what about whatever?" Right? It's but to say that they're the only ones, and maybe I just misunderstood. If they start a super PAC type stuff where they're raising funds and they're going to donate it to candidates that are strong to a regardless of political affiliation, I think it might be a positive thing because that's not RMGO's lane, right? RMGO is primarily a lobbyist group. They do funnel money to politicians. We can agree or disagree. I think RMGO has sent money to some Republicans that are weak on the Second Amendment, and they could have sent it to a stronger Democrat on the 2A side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was my only beef with this idea that we're the only ones that exist in Colorado, because they're not,
Yeah.
because they're not.
I didn't watch that. I didn't hear that. I just saw that they had popped up. I watched like, I don't know, 30 seconds and I was like, oh, there's Ava, there's Leslie. This is a new organization. And like initially I was excited because competition is good.
Yeah,
And I think that in order for RMGO to be the best organization it can be, I think it could use some healthy competition in the
correct.
state. We're all going towards the same goal. So as long as we continue to go towards the same goal, I don't really care who claims the victory as we get
Correct.
over the line.
Correct.
But RMGO needs to know that there are other organizations that will
Yeah.
step up if they don't do their job. So, and I don't think it's a bad thing for there to be more voices and more motivation too. So, and I haven't had a lot of interactions with Ava, and I don't think I've had any direct interactions with Leslie, but I see the work that they do, especially down here in Southern Colorado that Ava
Correct.
does, and it's good work. So,
Yeah, it's positive.
Mhm.
It's not a overall. It's not a negative thing that comes out of there. My only issue was that one thing is
Yeah.
it's
So,
the claiming that we're the only ones, and yeah, that's there's obviously more than just them, and they're not
mhm.
the only ones that exist. But yeah, I do agree with this whole um there ought to be more than just them,
Mhm.
than just RMGO. And because we look at the national scale, we look at the national stuff, and there's Gun Owners of America. To be 100% honest with you, I have no clue what the fuck they do. Um, I know they're a lobbying organization, but I really don't see them do much at all. But they exist. They have a space. They have a lane. And then you have the NRA. Hate them, love them, indifferent, whatever it is, how you feel about them. They have created a spot for training more than anything else. Some lobbying and whatever. And then you see Firearms Policy Coalition, which they specialize more in obviously suing the shit out of people. So everybody has their lane, their space. Guns for Everyone National is now slowly, very fucking slowly, carving a lane where more instructor development more than anything else. Not lobbying, not politics. We'll sue when it's necessary and we find appropriate. But for us, it's educate humans and certify instructors. That's going to be our thing. And everybody's got a space, everybody's got a lane, so it's definitely a positive to have. I was going to try and pull up the thing, but it won't let me do it without logging in, and I don't want to
Oh
log
yeah.
in.
Yeah, and so this kind of brings up a kind of a dilemma, a question. I'm not sure. Like, this is something that I've experienced more in the last 10 years. than any other time in my life, and more working with you than with working with anybody else, is how much do you have to agree with somebody in order to work with somebody?
Yeah.
And it's very subjective, which is what makes it such a difficult question to answer. Like if I'm just conducting business with you, like I'm going to buy your widget because you have the widget in stock, how much do I really care about your labor practices and your, like the purchasing is an agreement to give you this and you give me that. And as long as that's successful, how much more do you need to care? Are you going to boycott Chick-fil-A because, it's full of bigots? Or are you going to go just give them your money and get your fries? As opposed to working very closely with somebody and forming a long-term partnership with somebody, you probably need to align very closely with them on almost everything. But the issue I run into is like, you're always going to hit that point with somebody where you're like, I don't agree at all. Yeah. So, and this is just something personal development where I've been trying to learn how to walk this line. And every time I like, to be honest, every time I bring up somebody with you, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about talking to this person. You're like, nah. Even them? Are you sure? And it's like very high standards, which is always, high standards are good, but I'm still trying to learn how to navigate
Yeah.
all of this, because sometimes it'll surprise me. I'm like, I don't think we want to work with them, and you're like, no, that's good. How do you calibrate your own compass around this stuff personally?
It depends on the task. It depends on what the objective is. It depends on what the goal is. So if I'm looking for a long term somebody I'm going to communicate with on a regular basis, where we're going to need to trust each other, then yeah, the standard's pretty high. If they're going to represent me and I'm going to represent them, then the standard has to be really high. If we're trying to reach an overall goal, so a perfect example of this is Firearms Injury Prevention Initiative. I'm there with humans that I would have a really difficult time communicating with on a very regular basis. There's people there I'm going to see on the Capitol maybe on Tuesday, and we're going to fight and we're going to argue and we're going to say things we don't agree with. But when we're in these Firearms Injury Prevention Initiative meetings, that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing an overall how do we minimize negative outcomes with firearms? How do we reduce suicide? How do we reduce gun violence just in general? So for that, my standards are not very high, because I'm not dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, or we're not representing each other. I'm 100% okay with going out in public and saying, hey, I just talked to the person who works for the Brady campaign. We weren't talking politics. We were talking about how do we stop gun violence. That doesn't involve politics. And I think that's it. And then sometimes I just fucking wing it. Sometimes it's just like there's no rhyme or reason. It's just let's just do it, and see where it fucking leads us. But for the inner circle personal stuff, I'm very, very fucking picky. I can genuinely say that in terms of friends, it's basically you and like four other people that I would say are friends. We can categorize them best friends, very good friends, whatever. It's just friends. That's less than 10 people. It's less than 10 fucking human beings. Acquaintance is a fuck ton. Because it's tough, right? Because when people think guns for everyone, they're gonna think Edgar, Isaac, and anything that I do, and I have to think about this. Anything that I do falls back on you, and you have to be able to trust me, and vice versa, right? Like everything you do falls back on me, and it affects me. Everything that I do to a certain degree now reflects on Pincus, and conversely, we get the fucking text. So what the fuck what up with your boy? Every time fucking Rob writes a fucking article, what up with your boy?
The biggest anti-gunner on the planet. Did you know that? Yeah.
And in order for that human to be in the circle is I have to, even if we don't agree on every single issue, it's a lot of issues we agree on, and then the shit we don't agree on, it's at least we understand. We took the time to understand why they feel that way, and we can articulate that to those humans.
So it sounds like the way you think about it is it comes down to what is the goal and how much do I need to trust you to accomplish that goal?
Yeah.
And if I don't need to trust you at all, but we can still get the goal done, I really don't care at all. But if I need to trust you a lot and the goal is important, then we're going to be very careful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people I agree with that I would not associate myself
that you
with.
don't trust.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that I agree with that I just don't trust would do the correct thing. And whatever the correct thing is, right? Because correcting for everybody's going to be different, but it's not a matter of agreeing with somebody. Because if you really think about it, how much do you agree with your wife?
I don't even agree with myself most of the time.
That's the weird thing, right? Like we're just like, I said that. Like, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people think that they're right all the time. And if you just if you just kept a tape recorder on yourself and you just listened to yourself from like a year ago, you'd be like, I can't believe I said that.
Oh, dude, Facebook memories. Every time they post something, I'm like, what the fuck was
I forgot that on purpose. Like,
yeah. Lately, it's been reminding me of my politics days. And it's just like I used to be a fucking retard.
Yeah.
Like dumb. Like I used to be, because for those of you guys that don't know, I've ran for office twice and I helped run a presidential campaign. This is back when I believed in politics and politicians and political parties, and I don't anymore. And yeah, Facebook reminds me of that dumb shit all the time. All the time.
So I was watching the Beastie Boys documentary, which I don't know when it was released, but it was obviously after Adam Yauch had died, and so he wasn't there. But MCA and Ad Rock were talking about him, or Mike D. I always get the nicknames confused with the actual real names, but they were talking about him, and License to Ill was a party album, and there was some seriously amateur lyrics on that album, and which is fine. It's like that's what it is, and I still listen to the album. It's awesome. But then Adam Yauch like totally went a different direction in his life, and he was all free Tibet, and like he changed his attitude about all of these things. And somebody asked him a question one time, I guess. They said, don't you feel like a hypocrite being the empowering women guy when you released those songs on License to Ill? And he said, I'd rather be a hypocrite than never change. And I think that that's a healthy way to look at the fact that, like, of course, if you're a growing person, you are not going to look back on everything you ever did and said and be like, yep, that was totally right. Like, how could it be? There's so many ways you could be wrong, and so many ways you course correct over your life, that of course a mature person is going to say, yes, I have definitely changed my mind. Experience requires you to do that. Growth requires you to do that. And so, yeah, I listened to things that I've said even like last week, and I'm like, why did I say that? I don't know. It's a stupid thing to say. Hopefully you get better over time. Hopefully you get more precise and more careful, and you make less mistakes over time. But there's really an infinite number of mistakes to make and a pretty narrow range of right answers. And I think you're more than likely wrong, especially when you're younger. So it's that Dunning-Kruger effect. You wouldn't say it if you didn't think we were right, but you don't know what you're talking about.
Correct.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is where Guns for Everyone is at right now, right? Like it's it's that evolution. We've talked about this before, but I have found myself more and more now, just because of the students that have returned to the classes. I've gotten a lot of people are like, "Oh, I was with you like 7 years ago, but the new law brought me back." And at the end of every class, I make it a point to now ask for feedback. Hey, good, bad, ugly. Like, did you think I was a racist bigot? Because the person on Reddit, because the person on Reddit, and a lot of it is just hold you accountable, right? Is when you leave here, if you say stuff on the internet that you did not say to me directly, I don't take it seriously, good, bad, or otherwise. Like, if you said it to me, I take it a little bit more seriously. um and I've had several people are like, hey, I was here 5 years ago, 6 years ago, holy shit, this is way different, this is not the same. um it was better, it was better because of XYZ, because of the science, because of the neuroscience, because of the data, and it's not just regurgitating information and all that stuff. And I think for Guns for Everyone, that was the important thing, is just like, okay, like, we got challenged. Part of it was just me challenging me, and then you challenging yourself, and is this right, is this not right, and then progress. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about the gun community. The gun community is happy with not progressing. I made a post, and I know a lot of people kind of hated it, but it was just like, SHOT Show for me represents the beginning of doing the same shit you did last year. And it's go on Instagram, all you gun people, go on Instagram, and you're gonna see a lot of people sharing SHOT Show pictures, and from a year back is the same shit, and it's basically the same cycle over and over and over and over again. This has been my struggle with posting content, is keeping consistent with it, and feeling like I'm not doing the same thing over and over again. I have to get to a point where it's just like, I could only share so much content, and it's a positive thing because different people see it different at different times, and the algorithm will work differently. But it's that fear of, it's that balance of wanting to not say the same shit over and over again, but how much can you say differently, and then still wanting to grow and say different stuff, but not just say different stuff for the sake of saying different stuff. So that's a struggle.
Yeah.
But
I think that it's easy to fall into the pattern because the pattern is a pattern. It's like, you know, um, we talk about the way the brain and the body work, and people are like muscle memory, and it's like it's not really muscle memory, but it is a very entrenched pattern, and it is, once it's there, very hard to break. And especially if you get some kind of dopamine hit from following the pattern. So following the pattern provides some level of stability where you have an expectation of the outcome, and then when the outcome happens, your brain is rewarded based on that expectation and outcome. Uh, there is a lot of risk in doing things differently from year to year, from moment to moment, because your brain doesn't know what to expect, and your brain not knowing what to expect puts you in some kind of like in a fight or flight response. And I know fight or flight is in a gross oversimplification, but
right.
It puts you into a stress response that may not be rewarded, and it's probably actually not going to be rewarded. If it's really a risk, then you're talking about much lower chances of what your brain thinks is success. And so I think that's why you see people, they're like, especially on social media, where it's attention is the reward. And so you post your videos of SHOT Show, you post your pictures, and people who wish they were at SHOT Show are sitting there liking your pictures. And they're like, dude, it'd be so cool to go to SHOT Show. We both know from experience it's not really that cool. It sucks. It's a good chance to see people that you normally don't have a good enough reason to go visit. But other than that, it sucks. And so I actually had a few people asking me, "Oh, are you going to SHOT Show?" I was like, "Fuck no!" Like,
Yeah.
even if I had the money, I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And it's so. I think that's why we see people kind of repeating that same thing. It's something, it provides you with some level of stimulus and reward, and your brain is a sucker for that. And it sucks because it's very easy to not to progress. And it's taken me a really long time to progress. I had a lot more doubts about things that you were doing or saying or things that you were bringing in. I'm like, I don't know about that. But the progression has been worth it, but it's stressful, man. It's like super stressful, to the point where sometimes I just don't even want to do it. And it's easy to go up in front of a bunch of people and just repeat a bunch of things that somebody else told you. It's much harder to go out there without a plan and be like, well, we're going to talk. I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. And I don't know who's going to argue with me and who's not going to argue with me. And let's just see how this goes. Like it makes me much more stressed out than I used to be before classes. But it's okay because I'm not there to feel good. I'm not there to make everybody else feel good. I'm there to impart some high stakes information for the purpose of you might need this at some point to save your life. And even if I don't do a great job, I'm still doing my best within that context.
Correct.
So, because lately it's been like every single class at the end of it, I'm like, God, I'm such a fucking idiot. Because I'm so much less sure about the end result, because it's kind of like the test thing. If I could give everybody a test and they would all pass it, then I would say, okay, well, we met the goal. We passed the test.
Yeah.
It must have been good enough to pass the test. But this is much more subjective. And it's kind of funny. Like, I don't think anybody knows this about me except maybe my wife. But when nobody's around, I am verbalizing all of my negativity. So I am sitting there putting shit away saying, oh my God, you're such a fucking idiot. And I'm saying it out loud. Like if you had a camera, dude, you'd be like, this person's crazy.
Just fucking demeaning yourself the entire day.
I've been doing that since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I remember when I was playing baseball, every time I'd make an error, I mean, the next 2 minutes was just going to be this unleashing of this tirade of obscenities at myself.
What a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's super fucking weird. We all do it though. Like we all fucking do it. But it's the cliche, right? It's just what do you do with that information? It's how Guns for Everyone has significantly improved from where it was 10 years ago, definitely from where it started. Is this like, hey, how are you a fuck up? Cool, you fucked up. Nothing we can do about it now. How do we change this? How do we make this better? And I think that's where students and that's where instructors need to get at is, where do you suck? Accept that you suck. And I think a lot of humans just don't accept that they suck.
It's painful to their psyche.
Oh my God, it fucking sucks. One of the for me anyways, one of the realest quotes that I've ever seen is, I never realized it, and I've analyzed this for the past like 6 months. I've dwelled on it, on how real this is to me. Is just that one of my biggest fears is that people see me the way I see myself. Because if people see me the way I see me, is just like, that'd be fucking horrible. That'd be fucking horrendous. And cool, but like it's how do we get beyond that? How do we just accept it? You're fat, you're ugly, you're a fucking weirdo, whatever, right? It just, how do we get beyond that? Because there's nothing we can do to fix it. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is make sure it doesn't fucking happen again. And I think just
you mean you can't go back and fix what you did?
I can't. I can't.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can fix going forward.
Correct. There's a lot of cringy shit that we did as instructors back in 2010, 2011, 2012.
But not pointing guns at each other.
Not pointing guns at each other.
Despite what the internet thinks based on one grainy photograph.
Oh my God! SHOT Show right now. Guess what? Everybody's fucking doing.
Yeah.
Everybody.
They're following Colonel Cooper's rules, man. Don't you know?
everybody at SHOT Show right now is not following their bullshit rules. We don't follow the four basic firearm safety rules, because this is a perfect example of this stuff. Is right now everybody's at SHOT Show. Gun stores do this all the time. It doesn't matter, but this is part of the, like, they don't analyze.
Mm-hmm.
I fucked up. The rules are stupid. Let's move on beyond that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
figure something better. Let's do all this shit. Go look at all the SHOT Show pictures, and people are willingly not treating the gun as if it were loaded.
Yeah.
Willingly pointing guns at everybody.
I remember there was a controversy about this a few SHOT Shows ago when Holosun, I think it was Holosun, was demoing their concept of the thermal, or somebody else was demoing their thermal concept.
Yeah.
And it was on a gun, and a bunch of YouTubers had gotten a hold of this thing, and they were videoing through the thermal, the targeting people in the, convention space.
Yeah.
And people were like, dude, that's not cool. It's like, why not? I mean, you already accept that people are pointing guns carelessly everywhere. So now, in order to demonstrate the functionality of not the firearm, but an accessory to the firearm, you're going to get on their case for purposely pointing these things at other people.
Correct.
And it's like, which one's worse, carelessness or intentional acts?
Correct.
And to be clear, I don't disagree with people for pointing guns at SHOT Show. First of all, those guns are put through a safety checking program. The safety record is very good at SHOT Show. And where else are you going to point these things?
Yeah.
When you're literally like side, shoulder to shoulder with people at the booth, and you're trying to look at something. You got the sales guy right in front of you. You got like the booth whore standing next to him. I make this point in the classes when we talk about generally safe direction, and I talk about these situations where you cannot call what you're doing a safe direction. So we say generally safe direction whenever possible. And we talk about a couple cases where it's just not possible. But then I ask the question, when you're in the gun store, can you point the gun in a generally safe direction, even when it's crowded in there? And everyone's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, if you've been in the gun store when it's crowded, you can still point the gun in a generally safe direction. So do it. But most of these people have not been to SHOT Show. It is much more difficult, and in many, many cases impossible, for you to keep that gun pointed in a generally safe direction. And
there's a lot of people that just came in, so I want to play this video to kind of stress this idea of you can't always point in a safe direction. You don't know what is always beyond your target. And this is, for me, this is one of the most perfect videos, because it has so many humans in it, and the things are happening, and obviously the internet's not gonna fucking work with me now.
You're like stalling, and it won't come up.
It's just gonna think about it for, there we go. And like this whole time, unholstering, right? Unholsters. Pew.
Right there. Yeah.
Muzzles everybody. And then look at these people that are right here. Super close to the bad guy. Bad guy smokes that motherfucker. I think we were supposed to say, warning, your feelings are about to be hurt.
Self-censorship.
But again, it's the analyzing the we're wrong, and let's make it better.
So I've been thinking about this lately, about the idea of like what we think is effective versus what we know is effective, and been kind of thinking about it in the context of fighting and warfare. So in times of peace, weapons development is usually not very useful. sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes what does happen is like ridiculous. And some really good examples of this, you go back to like the turn of the century when we first started figuring out vehicles, gas powered internal combustion vehicles in warfare. And the things that they came up with were just absolutely ludicrously stupid. But you're trying to solve a problem where you don't really know what the parameters are. Like, in warfare, you need mobilization. And in warfare that you need that carrying stuff far with the least amount of effort is very important. But you don't really know what's going to work until you're actually in that situation. And so warfare changes because technology updates and things like that, but we don't really know how to apply that technology in warfare until the warfare is happening. And so we get all of these crazy ideas, but we don't test them because we don't have to test them until it becomes necessary to actually make sure that they work. And I think this is why the firearms training industry looks the way it does, is because what is being taught is so rarely actually tested.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, but it leads to things that are just not true, not useful. Because
this brings me to a conversation. I don't know if I can find it, but it was, for me, it was an aha moment. I get in these rabbit holes of wanting to. I'm going to try and find it here. It's a text between myself, Pincus, and Desargo. And this was a while ago, and I had a question because I start digging deep into. I like to nerd out. Once I learn about something, I want to learn everything there is about that shit. And I posed a question, and I think I've talked about this before, but I posed a question about. Let me see if I can find it here. About a neurological issue. This neurological thing was basically a condition that happens. Your brain gets so fixated on one thing, and then when it doesn't happen that way, your brain doesn't know how to react to it. Let me see if I just and maybe I'm not going to find it anymore, but one of the responses was essentially what you just said there, and that's this: the students are not going to experience enough of a repetition in real life for it to matter. Um, and that's the same thing that they do with choosing guns, and that's why it's so difficult for us for me anyways, to talk about how to properly choose a gun based off of science, is because everybody is thinking about the range activities, and that's fake. That's make believe.
Well, some of that range stuff could be true, but it's true in the wrong context. So this is why you get all the videos like, what does a Navy SEAL conceal carry? Like, I don't really give a fuck what a Navy SEAL conceal carries, because all of the credibility that you just put into the title, the fact that he's a Navy SEAL, is within the context of special warfare, not going to Safeway. And while some things do translate between those two, there's not enough that translates for us to justify appealing to authority and saying, well, the Navy SEAL does it, so I might as well do it.
Correct.
Now, if I was going to go train to do the things that the Navy SEALs do, and in the places where they do them, then yeah, I'm going to go get taught by the people who go do those things all the time. But team tactics and special warfare, covert warfare, being in theater, like none of that translates to being at Safeway.
Yeah. So I did find it. And I posed a question about prediction error. That's what it was. Prediction error.
Okay.
So any of you guys interested in this stuff, Google prediction error with the limbic system. And basically it's the outcome of this was at the end of this, and we have these conversations a lot. We text each other from time to time. I think you text me and I text you, and like, what the fuck about this and what about that? And then we talked about amygdala hijacking. But one of the things is one of the replies was, I'm not as interested in any illusion of prediction of outcome based on actual events, because so few of our students are going to have repeated exposures to actual events.
Not only that, but there's no way that those repeated exposures are going to be similar enough to call them repeated exposure.
Correct.
Like there's repeated exposure to amygdala response, but that tends to be only meaningful in context. So like we were talking, like I sent you that text the other day about the pilot talking about the aviation channel where the guy's an instructor, and he says, he's talking about the startle response and how difficult it is to solicit a true startle response in training, because the pilots in training usually know what's about to happen. Even if you don't tell them what's about to happen, they see enough things in the training to know that they're being set up for a specific scenario.
Correct.
And then, so he's talking about that startle response in the cockpit. Well, you could be in, let's say, 10 different aviation emergencies and really get those amygdala responses. And maybe by the 10th one, you're like, okay, I've been here before. I know how to stay calm and all of that stuff. But then you put that person in a mugging, and that there's no way to predict how well they're going to control that amygdala response in the mugging, even though they've been in amygdala responses in a different context. It might not. But there's really no way to predict that. So
I'm gonna try and put this up here just because we are talking about it, so I want people to have a little bit of context.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I can make my computer share the audio, because I think that's the most important thing is the audio. So hopefully, and usually, if you can hear it, everybody else can hear it. Can you hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
No?
Nope.
I don't know if anybody out there in the wild can confirm whether or not we can hear it. So let me, maybe if I share the fucking screen, we can actually fucking hear it. Can you hear it?
No.
That's fucking stupid, then.
We'll set it up for next time.
Yeah.
So I actually ran into this problem with Josh the other day. Sound that was recorded and stored on the computer was playing over, I think it was Restream, but internet sound was not. It was weird. Oh, Skyline says no. Hey, what's up, man? So I really like this channel, this Mentor Pilot channel. There's a few channels like it on YouTube where they do kind of like a postmortem on air disasters. And a lot of these guys, because they are experienced pilots, are very detailed in how they discuss what led up to the accident. And what usually happens in these air accidents is that errors cascade, and all the different possible things that could have happened line up to allow this one specific thing to actually happen, where like a billion times before it didn't happen, but this one time it did. And it's usually never just one thing. It's all the unique circumstances. They call it the Swiss cheese model, where they have layers and layers of protection, but once in a while, all those layers line up and there's a hole that goes all the way through, and an air disaster happens. And that just speaks to the unique circumstances that we find ourselves in, and how do we prepare for such chaos. We prepare for that chaos by preparing ourselves to respond automatically when the need arises.
Automatically. We would argue that it's automated.
Yeah, not automatic.
Yeah, the only difference in semantics, right? I'm just being pedantic at this point, but the difference would be the startle is automatic. You have no control over it what so fucking ever. None whatsoever. and automated, you trained into your system as a response to something. Hitting the brake in your vehicle is an automated response, even though it happens without any thought. It's
Mm-hmm.
still automated. You had to train your body to do it. Automatic stuff, it's a reaction. It just happens. That is one thing about Skyline, and we were diverting just a little bit. We don't encourage pandering. We don't encourage let's just do the I'm Mexican, so let's train all the Mexicans, right? Because I'd have all the Mexicans because I am Mexican. Hijos de su puta madre, me pelan la verga, cabrones. Arriba la América. But Skyline, I know for a fact, and this is why whatever that person said on Reddit, well, we know this. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a dumb thing to say. Like, we know that.
Mm-hmm.
Triple J Armory, whatever, Skyline, consistently, all of the Mexicans that I've sent to him, every single one of them, every single one, and that doesn't mean they're gay, but just to give an example, is every single one of them has always said that Max over at Skyline treated him well, respectfully. This is why this what you said is correct. I think the only one that I've always heard consistently bad about is 5280 Armory. I've never really experienced it myself, but consistently, those people tell me, no, that motherfucker, those people are a lot of racist and a lot of, again,
Yeah.
I can't confirm it, so I'm not gonna say
Well,
me.
yeah, and I've heard that too. I haven't had any experience with that, but I've had people say that to me. And there's also something tricky about this, which is like everybody on the staff could be super friendly, but then you walk in the store and it's like big flag says Trump won,
Yeah.
and then let's go Brandon and fuck your feelings. And that's fine. It's your store. Run it how you want to. But the way we consider people to be friendly and welcoming and opening may not be the same way that other
Correct.
people feel that, if they walk in and to some degree, like grow up, like,
Correct.
you're going to let a flag get on your nerves.
Correct.
Like you got some growing to do as a
Correct.
person. If you walk in and everybody's super, you got your purple hair, you got your like, I hate Trump t-shirt on, and you walk in and everybody treats you well. And you're like, well, they had a flag up. Like, dude, you have a problem.
Yeah.
But if you consistently walk into places like that and people do treat you not so great, then I could see how you could associate those things. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, it's good people over there. You have to understand,
Yeah.
the dynamic. And I agree that you don't necessarily feel welcome everywhere you go. And that's, that's another thing is we expect now to feel welcome everywhere we go. Like, well, they weren't very welcoming. You realize that for the most of the history on the planet, if you were a stranger and you walked in, there was like a good chance you're going to get jumped. Well, it's because I look different. No, it's because you're not from here.
This is my thing about customer service. If I go to a restaurant, I have to know why I'm there. I'm there for food, not for the service.
Mm-hmm.
If I want service, then I'll probably find a shitty restaurant with shitty food, but the very bubbly fucking server that's super awesome. But at the end of the day, I want good food.
Mm-hmm.
It means nothing if I'm there to go buy a gun, that's what I want to do is go buy a gun. I don't observe. Like, I get why some people do this, but I'm there for a reason. And if my goal was accomplished, then
yeah. But you're also going in there. It's kind of, I don't know. We're all kind of the same, and we're all different in some ways. Like you're coming in there with a lot of knowledge, and you've probably done some research into what you want, and you're kind of there for the price and to see if they've got it in the color you want. You already know what you're buying, as opposed to somebody who's like never bought a gun before, and they walk in, you're like, I don't know what kind of gun to get. And then somebody says, well, you're, 95-pound female, so buy this one. And you're like, well, I don't really feel like you thought that through before you recommended it. So it depends. I want people who are going to not waste my time, and I want the best price, and I want it'd be nice if they remembered me from the last time I was in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I
Like,
just want to walk in and everybody just be like, "Oh, that's Edgar.
my
That's
God,
Edgar.
he's
Oh my
here.
God,
He's
he's
here.
here. He's here." I
Yeah.
fucking hate myself so much that I just want people to acknowledge my status
I
in the
need your
fucking gun.
validation. Love me like my mother didn't. Yeah. So yeah.
By the
So
way,
I
we are doing very well on Twitter X. So one thing,
the Nazi channel.
yeah, one of the things we can't do on X is every time I reply on the chat,
Yeah.
it won't send it to them.
Yeah.
So earlier I said if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask the questions. If you guys are on X, you guys probably didn't see that, but feel free to ask questions about anything really.
So let's divert away from guns for just a minute, but I do think it's relevant, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to tie it back. What do you think of what Elon did?
I don't.
Okay.
I
I mean, you saw it.
I saw it. It's
Okay.
hard not to see it. It's difficult not to see
Hard
it.
not to see it. Yeah, not see it. Yeah.
Not see it. It is difficult to not see it. And I didn't really think much of it. It's for me, it's funny to see both sides because they both do it.
Yeah.
They posted quick. Tim Waltz did something very similar at a rally, and it was if you put them side by side, they did the same shit.
Tim Waltz is just as awkward as Elon is.
Yeah, they're fucking awkward human beings.
Yeah.
So he grabs his heart and then he fucking does the salute. There, I did it. Does the salute.
Well, we know they're not going to take you off Twitter for doing that.
And I mean, so I don't really think about it.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's not worth it. I take it for what it is, and it just a political bias.
Yeah.
And their own cognitive dissonance and all of that shit, and it's just more funny to me more than anything
I think
else.
that if you wanted to believe that you saw a Nazi salute, then there's no way you're not going to see that.
Yeah.
And I think if you really don't want to believe that Elon would do that, you're going to look for all kinds of ways to explain that he didn't do it.
This is why I try my best not to look for racism, right? Because it's really easy for me, especially because I'm relatively sensitive. You know this. I can get pretty fucking sensitive with my feelings. I try my best not to look for racism because it's so easy to find it. It is so fucking easy to find racism and I'm not saying because it exists. I'm saying that because
it's easy to interpret.
Yeah, like I can say you did this because you're racist. And that's probably not the case. Somebody just hates everybody. Somebody had a bad day or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Right? So, but it's because of exactly what you just said. Like if you want it to be that's probably what it is. It's
not even probably what it is. If that's really what you wanted to see, there is no way you're going to see it any different than that. You are not going to be able to entertain the idea that it wasn't what you think it is.
And this is why I struggle with this notion of your perception is your reality. Like that's the reality. Like it's your reality, but it's not the reality. It's only Elon knows. Only 5280 knows if they're fucking racist or not.
Right. Only Elon's going to know what he meant, and he might not even know.
I think we've all accepted. It's weird that we all accepted for a very long time. This human is fucking a tard.
Mm-hmm.
By all intense purposes.
All intensive purchases.
We've always said that, he's autistic and he's on the spectrum and it's cute. He's a genius and it's so awesome to see the autistic out and all that shit. We've always accepted that. And now all of a sudden, he's just a shitty human being.
Wouldn't it be funny if we found out that Hitler was autistic? Well, and now we had to be nice to him.
All of my white homies are now trying to play this. I have this thing that white people conquered the earth by simply convincing people that their stupid shit was cool. So you guys go around telling everybody being gay is awesome. and being autistic is awesome, and being delusional is awesome. I don't know why I threw gay in there because that has nothing to do with it.
No, actually, it
Uh,
does. The there is a theory of racism that's exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose to weed out all the weak people who they think are weak.
uh-huh.
And so the idea is like really pushing the whole trans thing, because if you're dumb enough to neuter yourself or
Oh,
to destroy your own ability to procreate, then we don't want you.
oh,
And I'm
and
not saying that this is an idea I agree with. I don't really know
correct.
one way or the other, but it's like the royal family. If that's when you think of like
Yeah,
big picture racism, you think of like the royal family, and they
yeah.
constantly expel the people that they don't think are strong enough to be in the royal family.
Huh.
And it's an interesting idea, and I think it makes sense. I agree. Again, I don't know that that's what's going on, but if you just look at it logically,
Correct.
it's kind of like convincing your little brother that he doesn't really want to go out with you, because you trick him into thinking that he's better if he stays home when you go out and do the things that you want to do, because you just don't want him around.
It's weird how we got on this, but it speaks a lot to human psychology
Mm-hmm.
and how very easy. I had a question yesterday from a young chick too. She was a young gal, maybe college age, and she asked, "Why do people do this? Like, how come people don't do this and don't do that?" And my only response is like, because people are rule followers, and I think that's true on both sides of the political spectrum. So, slightly related to that is, you and I know this. We've talked about this for a very long time. Is they're not going to take your guns away really fucking fast. They're just going to pass one law, and at some point, all the fudder are going to be like, "Well, that's the law, so we have to do it because that's what the law says." And well, that's the law. The new law says, instead of actually fighting it and or not following it and kind of going to the Supreme Court, whatever, right? So it's a weird thing to kind of dive in. It's a fucking weird way that we got here.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Elon got us here, but
Thanks, Elon.
thanks, Elon.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about and study how easy it is to take over a population just through subliminal messages and just
Mm-hmm.
saying
Well,
weird
if
shit.
you can orient people towards a goal, then there's really nothing they won't do to pursue that goal. Um, if you make the goal important enough to them, and so this is how large populations end up following authoritarianism. Is it's not they're not necessarily all on board for the brutality and everything. They're on board for what they think they're going to get out of it. And once you can convince them that that's going to happen, then there's really nothing that they won't do to pursue that, especially in a group. And so that's what we have to guard against, is understanding that you don't know this yet, but you are willing to do some pretty heinous shit if you're given the right reason. So don't let people give you reasons that aren't your own.
Yeah.
If you let people dictate your reasons to you, then it's only a matter of time before you're going to start doing things that you wouldn't have imagined you would do.
That's bonkers. I think you and I just had this weird conversation when we came back from Mexico for different reasons, but it's that we're all kind of like this one or two steps away from, or circumstance or change of life or whatever, from doing some really fucking, because we're all there. It just
Mm-hmm.
we just don't live under those circumstances that bring it out on us. Like, you're all
Right.
murderers. It's weird to accept that you're all murderers. You're all whatever thing it is. It's just the right circumstances have not bring for good. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
get to those circumstances good,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
that's why
it's so true what you say.
it's so important that we appreciate what we have. People talk about how dangerous the streets are. And I'm like, look, if the streets were really dangerous, we wouldn't be having these fundamental conversations about how violence works, because you would already know.
Yeah.
You know, you may have been in a violent encounter at some point in your life, but it's not a regular part of
Correct.
your life.
Correct.
And we should appreciate that. And we talk about things like hunger. Like, very few people in this country actually know what real hunger is, and that's great. That's awesome, and we should appreciate that, because your grandparents knew what it was. And then, we were like, oh, they won't even buy a new, they don't even buy new napkins. They just keep reusing the old ones, because their environment, their reality taught them what they needed to do to survive. And they were willing to do the things that, they shit on us. Well, you're not willing to work hard. I was like, well, yeah, but we don't really have to. Like, and that's
Dude,
that,
go ahead.
that's how we get to societies who don't have any memory of how their ancestors lived, because we're just not in the same environment anymore.
There's two things here. One, I had family visit from Mexico over Christmas, and I watched. Now I've been to her house. I when I went to go do classes in Monterrey, I stayed at her house. So this is my auntie from Monterrey, and I know this. It just doesn't click. At certain times of the year, depending on the situation, at certain time of night, there's no more water in Monterrey, certain areas of Monterrey. So a lot of houses need to have a cistern up at the top, or some sort of tank to collect water collection system, or just to pump water there during the day so that you have it at night. They don't have that. They had it, whatever. So at night there's no water. Like, it's just fucking, you're not gonna flush the toilet, or you're gonna use a bucket that's already full of water, whatever. Anyway, she came and visited, and she was washing her hands, and I watched her, and it clicked. She would wash her hands, wet them, turn off the water, put soap, fucking do the thing, and then turn the water back on. I'm like, that's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
That her condition, her circumstances has her going through all that shit. I don't turn off the water to fucking wash my hands.
Right, because you don't have to.
I don't have to.
Right, and this gets to what I was saying when we were in Mexico, and also what I brought up with Mike is like that we're wired for efficiency, but efficiency is dictated by first what is effective. And so what's efficient for you in an environment where water is basically unlimited is different than what's effective for somebody who lives in an environment where it's not. Yeah. And so to make sure that she has water when she needs it, the efficient thing to do is to shut off the water. But that doesn't make any sense unless you're in that environment.
Correct. Unless you're in that environment.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing, there's a point there. We need to come back to that. The second thing is this, because of circumstances. I had this conversation with my brother. I think he's a quasi fucking flat earther, and I hate to admit it. But now,
what is a quasi flat earther? Like the Earth is somewhere between round and flat.
I think what I really meant to say there is, I don't have the courage to ask him if he's not, because I don't want to admit that he's a fucking flat earther. Like, for me, if you're a flat earther, you might as well be a meth head. Like, it's just like there's no like, you're basically just gone, and there's no fucking hope for you in life because you're a fucking flat earther. But anyways,
so flat earthers are out there stealing your bike and like,
oh my god, like I think I'd rather get my bike stolen than so he was talking about how he doesn't believe we landed on the moon. I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. He's like, well, tell me, like, how do you know that we landed on the moon? And it's the normal shit. And he's like, well, how did we lose the technology? I was like, because we don't have to go there anymore. So we lost the technology for the shit we used to use, but we're developing the technology for the new stuff for 2025. It's not like we don't know how to get to the moon. In fact, we've consistently sent shit to the moon and shit that orbits the moon, and people just landed on the fucking moon and the South Pole and of the moon and on the other side of the moon. There's no such thing as the dark side of the moon, but on the other side of the moon, the one that doesn't face us, So like we have the knowledge. The U.S. hasn't sent anybody in a very long time, but it's to your point. It's because there was no need for it. There's no so your environment, your circumstances dictated for a different thing, and you lose this conversation. In the U.S., we've had it very fucking cushy, and
Most
of us have had it very fucking cushy, and we don't have the need for good defensive training, and we've
Mhm.
fucking forgotten good defensive training based off of real circumstances. And we don't, because we're not in the presence of constant chaos and
Yeah,
violence, and any shit at the range will do because we don't have any reference point.
right.
To
And
this is why
actually, the
people
more
like
fun,
timers.
yeah, the more fun it is, the more likely you are to do it, even though there's no evidence that it's effective or efficient.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say most everybody has had a cushy because one of my favorite YouTube guilty pleasures for a while, I don't really watch them anymore, but for a while I was watching a lot of them, was the Hood to Hood series, where the young dude was going around with a camera and he's just going to every hood in the country and just interviewing people. And there's not really a lot of questions. It was just round up a bunch of, BGs and OGs and just like turn the camera on and what do you want the world to know? And almost all of them, in fact, I can't remember a situation where they weren't doing this while they're talking to the camera and giving the interview. They're constantly scanning their environment.
Yeah.
They're constantly looking up and down the block. Anything that catches their eye, they will stop talking and they will focus on that thing until they know what it is, and then they'll go back to talking. And that's an environment of constant violence and constant threat.
But for them, not for anything else.
Correct.
Like grandma that lives there is probably not in the same mindset. Grandma that lives there in the same household doesn't have, they know they're in gang life.
Right.
So they're in the violence. It's self-created violence.
Right.
It's not.
So grandma's not scanning the corner every time she goes out, but grandma's probably not going out after dark.
Correct.
So grandma's context within the overall context is different than, the young men on the corner.
When we were in Mexico, that was one of the eeriest fucking things when we started driving back to Juarez.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been. I don't think I've ever been that alert on the road before,
dude. So we leave.
That was making me nervous.
Yeah, probably, dude.
Because if it was me by myself, I wouldn't have been paying any attention.
Yeah, because you'd be driving.
Well, no, because I wouldn't be aware of the risk.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we're leaving a small town in Chihuahua, in the middle, in the heart of Chihuahua. And this is at 3 a.m. Now they tell you don't travel at night. And we leave, and there's fucking literally no one out.
Yeah.
I think the only ones that were out were the cops. And even then we seen one or two, I think.
We went a long ways without seeing a single other car.
I'd say a good 30 minutes without
at least. Yeah.
At least. And I think I'm not gauging that properly.
And the one car we saw between the hotel and when we finally started getting to the highway junction, the first car we saw in the town was a cop. And that was it.
That was it. So when people tell you it was a ghost town, and because usually you're like, oh, there's nobody out, and then you go and there's one or two people and there's cars and it's not very congested, but there's still people out.
Yeah.
No, there was fucking nobody.
Yeah.
Fucking nobody out. That was one of the eeriest, like, oh shit moments.
Yeah. And
of my life.
We were talking about it the night before, and and you were steadily increasing your concern. And I was like, dude, we're probably going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But when we left and we're going through this town, we had been in this town during the day and it was a very busy town. Yeah. And we left, not a single person was out. That was a moment where I was like, whoa, man, this is maybe more serious than I thought it was. So yeah.
The only thing that gave me consolation is that at some point is we had the passwords.
You had him.
I had the
My
password.
dumbass are probably going to be not being able to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, I had the passwords. So that's the only thing that kept me like, fuck, because at some point I think I told you, I was like, I think I made a mistake. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
should not be out right now. And I was thinking about going back, and I was like, no, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And then finally we started to see a little bit more towards the highway. We started to see more cars. I think we're good now.
Yeah, yeah.
That shit was
That was weird.
weird.
That was very spooky. And I've been to rural Mexico before, but that was different. Yeah. So, kind of going back to what
I don't even know what my point was, but it was
yeah. Well, going back to the whole Elon thing, I think the reason we're having this conversation is because nobody has any real sense of where real danger is actually at.
Yeah.
And so we make things up to be concerned about because we all have this general anxiety of like, well, just being a human, and we say, oh, this guy, oh, he's a Nazi. It's like, what has he done
correct.
that Nazis do? Has he rounded people up? Has he destroyed the governing bodies? Has he dissolved the parliament? Like, what has he done? He spazzed out on stage, and you think it was a Nazi salute, but we're not in a position where we can truly recognize the danger, and so we're just trying to spot it. And so I like, to some degree, I'm sympathetic to people, but at the same time, I'm like, everybody's wound way too tight right now. And they're seeing, like you said, with the racism thing, you want to see it, so you're going to find it everywhere you look. I don't know what he was doing. He very well could have been just like when I said maybe he doesn't even know. Maybe he thinks in his head, oh, I really love everybody and I want everybody to know it. But it could be some of his Afrikaner roots coming out of him. He just subconsciously, that this is what you do when you're excited. Like, maybe he doesn't even know why he did it. I really don't care. I was laughing too when I saw it because I knew, I was like, wow, that is going to be really funny to watch people respond to that over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm more concerned with the fact that apparently it's okay now for the president to just rule by decree.
Dude, everybody was celebrating the shit out of his first day stack of executive orders.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Fucking stacks.
Yeah.
And everybody's just happy. Everybody's just like, yeah. I was like, that's what dictators do. That is, I'm an anarchist.
By the way,
again,
the guy who was sitting in his seat before him was doing the same thing.
Same shit.
Yeah.
Same
so
shit.
It's not like I'm trying to just pick on one dude here.
Correct. No, same shit. Same shit. And then if you look at the pardons and all of the numbers are astonishing. So again, I'm an anarchist. I don't think any of this shit should exist. It's silly that we have rulers and people who rule over us.
Yeah.
But such is life, right? That's where I live.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that the U.S. is still the best place to live on Earth. Like it just, I think I've seen enough to be like, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. So it is what it is. I accept the reality, but a reality of the U.S. is that presidents were never meant to just sign a pen and like, that's the law now. Mm-hmm. That is what it is. That's the new rule. That's the new regulation. Even if I agree with it, that's not it. I don't agree with government money going to ranges. I like it. I fucking love it. I enjoy it, but I don't think the government should be funding that because I'm afraid that the next is like, well, you fund this, so we're gonna fund shit you don't agree with. I'm always worried about the shit that I don't agree with. Cool. Trump probably signed some shit that I agree with first day in office, but I'm afraid of the next president that comes in, like the last one, that's gonna do the same shit, and now they're gonna do shit. the power you give the president that you agree with, you're giving to the president you don't agree with.
Right. Now, I will make one exception here, which is whatever executive orders were signed to undo unjust executive orders that were signed before. But really, at this point, what does it even matter? It's just a self-perpetuating problem. Whoever gets that seat after him doesn't agree with him is just going to sign all that stuff back.
Redo it.
Right? Because basically, he's validating the process by participating in it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying it was never the intent of that office that you just get to rule by decree and just make things up and write them down. And
there goes that whole representation thing.
Right.
Now it's just whoever voted for him is represented. Everybody else doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah. I did get a little tingle in my balls when somebody sent me the link to the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
Uh-huh.
And I clicked it and it says 404 not found.
404 not found.
I was like, and
I think the one for the Mexicans, it said go home. I think it did.
Did it?
I think it. I need to confirm this. Like, as the Mexican in me is like, do you fucking racist fuck? Because not everybody who reads Spanish is an illegal here. So you're assuming that everybody who, but hilarious nonetheless.
Yeah.
I'm going to find it.
Unfortunately, like, I feel like that's where we are, is just, you have to first and foremost try to appreciate the absurdity of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's the only way to stay sane is to keep your sense of humor about it. And I do think it's interesting that did you watch Trump on the Rogan podcast?
I got bored, dude. That was one of the most boring fucking episodes.
I think that most of his episodes are pretty boring at this point, but it's
fair.
Like, I mean, it's because I'm just not that interested. Like, a lot of people find it very interesting. So just subjectively speaking, I'm bored. I was interested in the Trump interview because I wanted to hear Rogan's questions about aliens and UFOs and the JFK assassination. And Trump said in that interview,
by the way, it's not true. And so it was a meme.
Okay.
I just confirmed it.
You fell for it?
I did fall for it because I could see it as a Trump move.
Yeah,
for sure. They doctored this to say go home instead of go to homepage.
So instead of saying go to homepage, it says go home.
Go home. Which again, obviously we're laughing at it. It'd be a fucking hilarious thing. The Mexican is like, you fucking cunt.
It's only funny though because you could picture it being true.
Yeah. Correct. 100%.
So Rogan asked him why Trump did not release the JFK files, and Trump kind of gave like, I don't know if I really believe his answer, but he said, well, there's too many people who would be negatively affected by it if we release that. And Rogan tried to get him to clarify, and he wouldn't really clarify.
Yeah.
But Trump said, I think, if I get elected, I think we're going to do it. And then day 2, day 3, he does it. And like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Because
it would be so easy for him to not do that. Like, I don't know what he really has to gain from doing it.
I mean, from a personal side, I don't know what society has to gain from it, because I think most of it was already open. They just redacted a few things.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is like, how much of it's going to be redacted when we see it,
Yeah.
Are we actually going to get answers or not? But
I don't think so.
The one thing that always baffles me about evildoers is the paper trails that they leave. Like, why do you leave a paper trail? I don't understand. So it's possible we may learn something, and I'm not really optimistic about it, but if we did, I'd be interested, I guess.
Fair.
I believe, and I could be very wrong about this, but I believe that the FBI hired James Earl Ray to shoot Martin Luther King.
James Earl Ray?
James Earl Ray. What did I say?
Oh no. I got JFK and
Yeah,
MLK
yeah.
confused. Yeah.
And it's possible we might find out one way or the other. So
So is this all part of the same file?
yeah. Well, I mean, the executive order covered JFK, RFK, and MLK.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I thought it was
So,
just JFK.
um,
Well,
but
we know the FBI did all kinds of weird shit with MLK.
yeah,
Like that's fucking
and
proven.
and if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know if anybody can correct me on this in real time, but if I'm not mistaken, they did discuss eliminating him.
Offing
Um,
that motherfucker.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and it's kind of funny is like we are like, oh, scandal. It's like this is how power functions and always has. I've been listening to Dan Carlin's series on Alexander the Great, and after Alexander the Great's father was assassinated, he basically just went on a killing spree. Alexander did, taking out not only the people who planned his dad's death, but everybody that they associated with.
I'm just mad that fucker got to have sex with Rosario Dawson. That's what I'm mad about.
I haven't seen any of the films.
No, you'll see
Yeah.
some titties.
So,
Uh,
but yeah, I mean, I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying I don't know why people believe that the government wouldn't do that.
oh yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Um,
I'm in this weird zone where like I don't believe most of the conspiracy theories because people who believe in conspiracy theories go batshit crazy because they don't understand logic.
mhm,
Because like the moon thing is they don't understand technology and science and they don't know math, just basic fucking high school physics. So they're like, I don't know how it works. So aliens did it.
mhm,
Like the pyramids, like it's sure it was difficult, but humans fucking did it, and people have proven how they fucking did it and all that shit. It's fucking for to your point, it's difficult for us to believe because
mhm.
we're too fucking lazy to cut stone and all that shit. Like
Yeah.
we're too fucking retarded to do it, but they were fucking better than us. So they did it. So there's this fine line of like humans don't know about science, so they think bombs were in the World Trade Center because they don't understand that how what thermite is
Mhm,
and how easily thermite could have been created in the moment,
mhm,
because you were dealing with fucking um, rust and you were dealing with aluminum, and that's essentially all you fucking need in order for thermite to be created. But anyways, and so there's that balance of that, and yeah, the government's fucked.
mhm.
Like the government will fucking kill
Yeah,
you.
it's like I don't need to believe all your crazy theories to not trust the government.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's not because of Nixon and it's not because of Eisenhower, it's because that's government.
That's government.
That's government and that's power.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I think people want the easy answers, and the easy answer is to believe that the people in charge are not, capable of just deciding to end people's lives and doing it. The easy answer is to think everything's hunky dory, and as long as I pay my taxes, everything will be all right. And
And I don't think it needs an entire fucking government agency to do it. I think it's just one or two people that are like, yeah, let's fucking do it. And then they execute the fucking plan
yeah,
themselves. And that's how you end up with a lot of people in the FBI like, no, we didn't fucking do it. Like
yeah, yeah,
I'm the senior specialist of fucking diversity, equity, involvement, and I didn't hear about it.
yeah. So you're familiar with T-Rex arms?
Yeah.
So it's the two brothers. It's Isaac and Lucas. And Isaac, I guess, is the older one. And dude, Isaac Botkin sounds like Norm Macdonald. I just realized, and it's really funny to listen to him talk. You're just imagining Norm Macdonald. But he put out a series. So far, it's four parts. I don't know if it's going to go any longer than that, on the history of the ATF. And it's a lot of that. It's a lot of bad leadership and a lot of just regular people on the in the rank and file. And he was talking about how when he was growing up, his neighbor was an ATF agent, and she had no idea about the scandals that the ATF was involved in, even though like there's no reason she shouldn't have known, but that wasn't her job. Her job was basically paper pusher or something like that.
Yeah.
And according to him, she was a nice person, and she worked for this agency that just murdered people. and then justified it afterwards.
Killed all the dogs.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a really good series if you're interested in learning some history of the ATF. I learned a lot. I consider myself to be relatively well informed, and there was a lot I didn't know about, especially where the ATF came from. Did you know that during Prohibition, the government decided that to prove their necessity and to keep people from drinking, they poisoned
Yeah.
a bunch of people and killed a lot of people.
Correct.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. They
Yeah.
painted a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then they're like, see, it's bad for you.
And we're talking about like who started the fire at Waco. And like, we know that they murdered a bunch of people by purposely poisoning a lot of alcohol
Yeah.
and causing the deaths of hundreds of people.
Yeah. Just to
People
say,
who
well,
weren't even like violent, like you could make the argument that there was a shootout at Waco and those people were dangerous. These were just unsuspecting people.
just trying to get drunk.
Just trying to get drunk. So if you get a chance to watch that, and that's for everybody, it's really informative stuff. Obviously biased, but what's not biased. So
what's not? Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of bias, I guess maybe we could start wrapping up soon. But I put out a video a few days ago about the USCCA situation with Kayla Giles and everything. And
what's going on there? I seen it and I meant to watch I try and watch your videos. And that's one that I have not watched.
It's long. It's 45 minutes long. So
who's this guy? Is this the mall shooter guy?
No, that's Alan Cawley. Okay. Kayla Giles is the woman who was involved in a custody dispute with her soon-to-be ex-husband, and she shot and killed him in the parking lot.
Oh, this was in Florida,
Louisiana.
Okay,
yeah,
same shit,
same thing. Yeah,
same thing.
And she was convicted of second-degree murder, and she appealed her decision, and she lost at appeal, but the reason why it's making the rounds again is because her case has now been argued in front of the Louisiana Supreme Court. So now we're waiting for the Louisiana Supreme Court to decide whether or not to give her a new trial.
Okay.
So, and the reason this is a big deal in the gun community is because she was a member of USCCA, and USCCA stopped covering her after covering the initial retainer for her attorney, which was $50,000. They dropped her, and USCCA has not been super forthcoming about why they dropped her. And Attorneys on Retainer, which is a competitor to USCCA, has really jumped on the bandwagon to spread the word how bad USCCA is for dropping one of their customers and leaving her to fight this without the money to fight it. And Attorneys on Retainer has managed to get a bunch of influencers to come over to their side. So that's the reason I made the video, is because there's new information because of the arguing in front of the Supreme Court. And I think there's a general lack of knowledge in the whole arguments about what's going on, about how self-defense cases actually work, in addition to how these companies actually work. Yeah. And Attorneys on Retainer is taking advantage of the ignorant consumer to trash USCCA. And I'm like, I don't really care about USCCA as a company. I don't have any ill will towards them. And, if they went out of business because they had an inferior product, I'd be like, well, that's what you get for having an inferior product. Right. But what does bother me is the massive amount of ignorance about what's actually at play here, and the way that Attorneys on Retainer, mostly, a couple other people, but mostly them, are just feeding that ignorance. Yeah,
we're supposed to be the side, again, not from a political standpoint, just from a society standpoint. We're supposed to be the side that does not encourage clickbait and does not encourage headline reading and get all the facts, and don't just fall for the headlines, right? Because all the gun people, if you go to the Twitters and the Facebooks and all that shit, you will see CNN's lying because misleading headline.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all this is just repeating the same tactic.
90% of YouTube is this.
Yeah.
90% of gun YouTube is clickbait,
This is why I don't care about our
misinformation.
titles anymore,
Yeah.
because it's all clickbait.
Clickbait, misinformation, omission, just taking advantage of the ignorant consumer.
Yeah, this is a lot of people have brought up the mall person, because they dropped him too.
He dropped them.
Oh, he dropped them. Okay.
Yeah, he went with a public defender. He basically told them, "No thanks, I'm going to go with the public defender."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why when people bring him up, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't like USCCA because of their training practices.
Mhm.
Um, they have an instructor farming business, and their instructor farming business is just to sell insurance. It's not to
Mhm.
provide good quality training. It's to sell insurance. That's it.
Mhm.
If you meet a USCCA certified instructor, the training they got from the USCCA is not super awesome, and its only purpose is to sell insurance. That's it.
Mhm.
That said, their insurance product, it is what it is. Like it's another insurance product.
Well, we know somebody who used it twice. Who
Oh
used
yeah,
and
Waller,
and
huh?
and used it in
Successfully.
well, now you said his name. Now I can't say the rest of this, but uh we'll just say that not every single part of his story lined up with the agreement. And without any hesitation, they covered him. And they covered him quickly. And I'm not going to get into detail. I can see the confusion on your
Yeah,
face, but I'm not going to explain what I just said because I don't want to put USCC on the spot.
fair.
But the idea that at the first opportunity this company's going to drop you doesn't line up with my experience, doesn't line up
Correct.
with the experience of the people that have used it that I know.
Correct.
um, and and so that's just a wrong
And by
take.
the way, like if this is the tactic that attorneys on retainer is using, then I'm waiting for the day they have to drop somebody because
Right.
of uh,
and
whatever
and the,
reason.
and that was the whole point I was trying to make is Kayla Giles's case was so messy, was so nasty that for USCCA to cover Kayla through her case actually could put the entire industry at risk,
Yeah.
because the entire industry was initially called murder insurance by insurance commissioners across the country. There is, at the very beginning of the concealed carry insurance um, business, was the accusation that this is somehow murder insurance.
Yeah.
And so if USCCA or if any of these companies, including attorneys on retainer, get stuck with an absolute disaster of a case, they're going to have to at least ask the question, should we cover this person? And I'm not
Correct.
saying they made the right decision. I'm just saying that because you don't understand the history of the business and you don't understand how self-defense cases and self-defense law
Yeah.
works, you don't understand the risk that these companies are taking by even just being in business, let
Yeah.
alone making a blanket statement that they're going to cover you in a self-defense case. And then somebody goes on to basically, at least the argument is, engineer a murder and call it self-defense
Yeah.
and then expect them to pay for it.
Yeah. You and this slightly unrelated, but you and I had a conversation with Brian, who's we'll say our attorney for Guns for Everyone. He's helped a few of our friends. He helps out Skyline Firearms as well, and we've gotten him some business in the Second Amendment industry quite a bit. He's a good attorney, and we had this conversation. It's like, hey, how about Guns for Everyone starts their own prepaid legal thing? We'll use you, and he laid out the plan, and it was basically the model of attorneys on retainer. He says it
Mm-hmm.
sounds great. Says, but all you need is one or two cases, and that type of program falls really fucking quick.
Yeah. And then you've made a promise to all the people who didn't step over the line. And now you can't deliver on that promise to all the other customers because of one customer who ruined, the Apple cart.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm not saying that USCCA made the right decision.
Correct.
But if you don't understand the dynamics, there's no way that you're going to understand why they probably had to make that decision. And
Correct.
so, and attorneys on retainer was, you know, they are good litigators. And so what they're doing is litigating USCCA's reputation out in public in order to sell
And here's the
membership.
question: is cool. How come you don't pick up the case then?
Mhm.
You can still technically pick up the case. You can still provide legal support
Mhm.
even in the Supreme Court and shit like that, because
Yeah.
somebody needs to fight for her in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there was some. I think that they did to some degree, but I mean, it's all marketing. And that's another thing is people don't understand is they think that AOR is telling them the truth, and AOR is just selling them a product. And
yeah,
I'm not saying that AOR is not going to deliver on their product.
correct.
They almost certainly will. I only say almost certainly because you can't guarantee anything in the
Yeah.
legal world. Period. And I think that the plan that they put together is a very competitive plan, legally speaking, compared to the other plans that are out there. But you're not getting information, you're getting marketing. You're
Yeah.
getting really sophisticated marketing from all of their videos. And so I put the video together because I've been trying to formulate how I wanted to talk about it. And there was another podcast, Gun Owners Radio out of San Diego, that put together an episode earlier in the week, and it finally helped me put my thoughts into order so then I could actually make the video. But I do want to give them a shout out because they did a really good job on their podcast. If you go look it up, Gun Owners Radio, their episode's about a week old now. So, and I don't care necessarily about one business versus another business. I care about the fact that people just do not understand what they're talking about
Yeah.
when it comes to the high stakes world of defending yourself against the law. And
Not just the bad guy, but the legal aspect of
right.
it. And we try and make it a point. This is why we don't follow the law. I mean, this is why we don't teach the law. There's other reasons why I don't follow the law.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah, for sure. But this is why we don't teach to the law. It's super fucking complex. Even if you did everything correct, you're probably still fucked. And even that's just probably. It's not guaranteed. It's not any of that stuff. It's
Well, like, you know, if you talk to Brian about what you should and shouldn't do, he's going to give you the perspective of an attorney
yeah,
whose entire caseload is made up of people who are fighting the legal system.
yeah,
He has never had a client. How do I put this? The guy who shot somebody, talked to the cops, told them everything, and walked away with barely even a phone call back from the cops. Brian has never had that client because
correct,
that client has never needed Brian.
correct.
And so Brian's getting all of his experience from the people who need him.
Yeah,
And the reason why I tell everybody to get an attorney after you commit violence against somebody is because of the risk of what happens if you don't. You very well could get through this whole process by yourself with no help. You did twice. But if it had gone wrong, now you're being violent with a gun, and that's maximum risk.
correct.
And so this is why it's really hard to explain to people, because there's plenty of examples to point to, and we're like, well, I know somebody who shot and killed somebody and the detective never even called him back. Okay. There's plenty of people who defended, you know, their little sweet old grandma and ended up paying $50,000 in legal fees.
Correct.
So it's the balance of risk and benefit that we're managing here by telling people to get an attorney. But you have to understand that even an experienced attorney is giving you a biased opinion about self-defense, the law, etc.
Yeah.
Because they're only informed by their own experience.
Correct.
So I listen to Brian when he's talking, but I'm not going to teach people how to defend based on what Brian says.
Correct.
I'm going to teach people Brian's phone number after they defend. Call him. And that's why we don't teach the law. One of the reasons why we don't teach to the law. So
It's hyper complex. It's not something you're thinking about during a self defense situation. And honestly, when you're about to die, it doesn't really matter. All
yeah,
that matters is just don't fucking die and live another day to fight the fucking court case. That will make you wish you didn't fucking survive.
right.
Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like it's what did you defend that was worth it?
yeah,
Like, are you fighting the court case because you didn't want anybody to touch your car, or are you fighting the court case because somebody grabbed your daughter?
yeah.
You know, and it's gonna suck, but at the end of the day, you're looking yourself in the mirror and say, "Well, I wouldn't have taken the alternative."
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This whole thing we talk about firearms legal protection. I encourage you guys to kind of check them out and look for firearms legal protection, and we could get you a discount code if you just hit us up. But here's the big picture thing, and the high level thing is just get a fucking attorney. Like
Mhm.
that's always more important to me than who you get representing you as in terms of self-defense stuff. Um because if I say farmers legal protection and you're like, well, I like this one better, I was like, I don't care. Like I don't have enough financial interest, I don't have enough loyalty, I don't have enough anything to sit here and debate with you which one's better, which one's worse. I know Farmers Legal Protection provides a fuck ton of coverage for the least amount of money. But at the end of the day, I've also seen students who needed an attorney and didn't have it and spend a year and a half in jail.
Mhm.
And that's why you should have an attorney, period.
Mhm.
Like fucking hard stop, have an attorney. Fucking
Yeah.
that's it. I,
And in Hancock's case, he was ultimately acquitted, which means it was a justified shooting, and yet he paid a enormous emotional, financial, social cost for his justified shooting. And so and people get this idea, it's like, if it's justified, then I have nothing to worry about. No, you can have a lot to worry about, even though at the end you get that justified act. So, so Joseph asks, are there more citizens in shooting in self-defense than cops getting in shootings every year?
the easy answer for that one, without looking at the numbers too in depth, is yes, only because there's a larger population of civilians than there are cops. So if
Yeah.
you just consider the sheer number, cops are significantly outnumbered
Mm-hmm.
compared to just civilians. So just based off of that, the answer would be yes.
Yeah. Actually, firing guns versus homicide versus pulling guns, like, that's a complex question too. What exactly does that mean? Self-defense shooting. I know shooting means pulling the trigger and firing a bullet, but a lot of times people don't parse out exactly what they mean when they ask a question like that. So even the CDC has come up with the number of approximately 500,000 defensive gun uses a year. But that can be something as simple as just drawing a firearm or preparing to even use a firearm, even though maybe the bad guy didn't even see the firearm. So,
Very difficult to quantify.
very difficult to quantify. We know police shootings, we have hard numbers on police shootings, but we don't have hard numbers on police use of firearms, because cops pull out their guns all the
All the
time
fucking time.
without shooting. Is it relatively rare? The use of a firearm is actually not that rare. The shooting somebody in self-defense is pretty rare. Killing somebody, even more rare. So defending yourself, not very rare at all.
Now, the interesting thing would be to look at when somebody needed to actually use the gun.
Yeah.
That's probably rare. I just did an interview today with Univision, and the story was about a dude who was driving. Kids were playing snowballs, and they threw snowballs at his car. He got out. He actually shot at the kids. And these are preteens, not adults. These are fucking children. And he ended up shooting one of the kids twice in his foot. And so that dude did not need to use his gun.
Correct.
But it's still going to be counted as a gun usage. But it'd be interesting to look at how many humans actually needed to use their gun.
Right. And that depends on the question you're asking. Because
Yeah.
like if the question is how many people have legal problems after using their gun compared to the number of people who needed to use their firearm, those are two different sets of people. And yeah, so how many instructors have been in shootings outside of the military? Most of the people in the military have never carried a gun in combat. Most of the people who have carried a gun in combat, again, we have to be more careful about the question we're asking here. And how many instructors have been in shootings? Like going back to what we were talking about before, the context of a single event does not dictate your ability to respond in all events. And so I think that most instructors who really know what they're doing and know what they're talking about would say that it's not important that the person who's teaching has been in a self-defense shooting. It's more important that you understand the context, the principles, the concepts, how to teach, how to convey information. And, I say that fully knowing like I am that dude that's never shot anybody in self-defense. And yet I teach people that. So of course I'm going to be biased and be like, oh yeah, definitely you don't have to do it. Like otherwise my whole reason for living doesn't exist. But
my shit comes up every once in a while. I don't make it a point to talk about the like a very blatant point to be like, I did the gun stuff, so listen to me. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I have been in two distinct situations where I needed to use my gun in self-defense. They looked very different emotionally, psychologically, mechanically. Everything, even when I talked to the cops, it was significantly different. So this idea that I've been in a shooting, so I know what I'm talking about, is like if somebody says, I've been in a car accident. Yeah, I've been in a car accident, so I know how all car accidents are. Like that's not it. That's not even close to being fucking true. You were in one singular car accident. You know about that one specific thing, and the likelihood of it happening that exact same way is nearly fucking impossible. So shut the fuck up, sit the fuck down.
yeah,
Your one time that you use your gun is not the rule.
mm-hmm.
It's a very unique thing. And I think any instructor who's like, well, I've done this, so like, that's so fucking well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it doesn't matter. That's why it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And there's things that people who have been in those situations don't know about what happened to them. And yet they're going to maybe be teaching from a place of ignorance. And they're going to tell you, well, because this is the way it went for me, this is why I teach this way. And they could be right. They also could have drawn the wrong conclusion from their experience. And they could be teaching things that are not useful or not the best way. Because if we're spending time and money on it, we should be learning the best way. And they're teaching things out of their own ignorance, drawing conclusions out of their own ignorance that are not the best way.
Dude, the second time that I used my gun in self-defense, I've when it comes up, I'm pretty vocal. Like I did shit there where I would never teach it that way. Like if you told me that story of when I actually shot the gun and all that stuff, I'd be like, I don't know if that's what the fuck you should have done.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's what happened, and it's again because my brain was somewhere completely different than what it was the first time. The first time, it was just me by myself. The second time, it was my wife was there. So a little bit of that murderous human that lives inside of me, he poked out. He's like, murder?
You rang? I do murder.
And it's not something I would teach. And it would be irresponsible for me to teach.
Right.
But that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Yeah, and that just contributes more to the unique situation,
Yeah.
you know.
I didn't do murder. I did like
Right,
that's
but
not the
the
fuck I'm
the
saying.
shadow inside of you
Yeah.
definitely woke up.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so Joseph says, what percentage of our instructors are actually teaching the right stuff? I have no idea. Most of them aren't, but I don't know how to put a number on that.
If I were to give it a bullshit number, just a guess, very uneducated guess, by the way, I must admit, I'd say that maybe about 15% of instructors are teaching right-ish or close to the correct stuff.
And you have to understand that, like, it's not easy to translate what is the right stuff.
Correct.
And so,
Yeah.
like, I'll be with an instructor who I know and I trust and I think is really good and really understands this stuff, and I'll hear him say something like, that's like, you probably didn't mean to say that, but you just fucked that up.
Yeah.
So um it it's a hard target to nail down.
Yeah.
But I'm actually surprised that you said 15%. I wouldn't have expected you to say a number that high. Um, so uh, to answer your question, how do we know who is teaching the right stuff? The the goal is to align what you're teaching with what is real first and foremost. And so when we talk about what's real, like, there are things that we know are real. Science is real. The brain, how the brain works is real. How the body works is real. How physics and chemistry work, and evolutionary science, and like, or evolutionary biology, I mean, like, all kinds of things that we can actually point to and say, this is a fact about how the human brain works, how the body works, how firearms work, and how to optimize that in the right context. It's the application of that that gets tricky, and how well we really understand those things, not just as a society and as a group of professionals like scientists who study how the eye works, but applying that to the unique context of using a firearm in a fight. But if the starting point is the wrong place, then we know that that teacher is probably teaching the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Usually if you show up to an instructor and they have everything that's choreographed, like you're gonna shoot this one 2, 3 times or 2 times, and then this one 3 times, and then you're gonna swing your gun to shoot this one 4 times. That's very choreographed, and that doesn't work in
if I'll tell you
self-defense.
one thing I use is, if somebody starts talking about shooting standards, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because this stuff is subjective.
for self-defense shooting,
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. If we're in a competition class and they
Right.
start talking standards, like, I'm going to eat that up. Well, what
Correct.
are the standards? How, like, if I want to win, how good do I need to be?
Correct.
But in self-defense, completely different context.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so that's usually a quick way. If somebody uses the word shooting standards, I'm like, they're on the wrong path.
yeah. Yeah, because the way Granny defends herself, effectively and efficiently is very different than the way I do it. It's very different than somebody who has no hands. It's very different than somebody who's got the fucking beaties and just had their fucking leg cut off, and like it's we're all very different to be meeting these quote unquote standards, and make no fucking sense whatsoever. Our own traumas affect the way we respond to good guy, bad guy stuff.
The size of
Um,
the target, the distance to the target, the
Dude,
need to shoot, like, all of this is
so many
subjective.
variables, very
Yeah.
subjective, very it's not a standard. Yeah, I think that is a good one. The way you worded it is if they start talking standards, like I'm gonna use a timer and I'm gonna grade your fucking El Presidente drill. It's that's not how humans do stuff. The video that I made about what it takes to be an expert or what is an expert, the original video, the one by Veritasium, I think does a fantastic job at talking about how you could be really good at a very choreographed thing, but it doesn't make you an expert or a genius. It just means you're really good at this very specific thing
Yeah.
in
So
isolation.
so Joseph says, I'll admit I'm too competition oriented. If you're competition oriented because you want to participate in competitions and you enjoy that activity and you want to be good at it, then you're not too competition oriented because your goal is to be a competition shooter.
Correct.
But if you mix the competition with the context of self-defense, that's where we get into trouble. I think that you can do both really well, but it's going to take an enormous amount of effort to train both of them correctly and not let the one influence the other. And so Rob Latham is a good example of this because he is an extremely well accomplished competition shooter, but he understands the limitations of that when it comes to self defense shooting, and he's gone on camera talking about how those differences affect his shooting and the shortcomings of being in a competition mindset within the self defense mindset. Self defense is all that matters when it matters. But if you like to hobby shoot, then competition does matter because it's what you're aligning your goals with. So I think the biggest thing is we don't confuse the two things and say because I train competition, then I'm as prepared as I can be for self-defense. You should be training self-defense for self-defense and training competition for competition.
Yeah, so up on the screen, I have Rob Pincus and Rob Latham, their series on Worlds Collide. So for anybody who's in that position where Joseph is at, and by the way, I appreciate you, Joseph, because every time we do this podcast, you're one of the ones that is always asking these kind of thinker type of questions, with which I appreciate. I always appreciate that stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of humans in your position. Somebody you and I know, our Vietnam homie.
Oh yeah, Fam.
Yeah, Fam. He's big into competition. He seems like he's a really good competition shooter. Fam, and he's gone to my classes, and everything I teach him, he's like, this doesn't fucking work for competition. So there's a lot of humans that are there. This series right here kind of explores two sides of like, why do you do this in competition, and why do you do this in the self-defense world? What intermingles, what doesn't intermingle? And this is from two of the best, right? Don't tell Pincus this because his fucking head's already ginormous.
Which is funny because on camera it's not that big.
Yeah, yeah. And Rob Latham, if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the most decorated competitive shooters out there, or at least he was at one point. I don't know if anybody's dethroned him. But this guy's got, I think, like 27 world titles or some shit like that, like an insane amount of fucking world championships. And you kind of explore both of those and what works in both, and what only works in one, and what only works in the other. So Worlds Collide, Rob Pincus and Rob Latham. It was part of the Personal Defense Network. I wish they'd still do it, but for some reason they don't do it. They probably got mad at each other.
Well, I think actually one explanation for that could be that they just did everything that they felt like they needed to, and why do it again? The videos are already out there. So, yeah, great questions. We went a little long because of the questions, but I'm glad that we did. So, what do we got coming up?
I think the biggest thing for us is expect changes to the way you see classes from us, the way you absorb information. We're in this process of to a certain degree eliminating what was the corporation guns for everyone, and focusing 100% on the 501c3 side of guns for everyone. A lot more instructor development stuff. We really want to produce more instructors and allow the instructors to do their thing instead of us being the instructors. We'll still do that, but I think we're better at, not that we suck at teaching the students, but I think for us, that's kind of where we want to go, is produce good instructors. We need more instructors. Kind of to your question is, how do we know they're teaching the right stuff? How many instructors are teaching the right stuff? Is we want to be able to answer that better in the future and say, hey, this is how you know, like, all of these people are teaching the correct stuff. and we want to increase the number of instructors that are teaching the correct stuff, the shit that you can prove, not opinions and not feelings and warm and fuzzy. So I think that's what we have coming up. I've done a silly thing, and I started developing games. So if you're on Android, you can go to our website gfenational.com and download some of our games. And the ads, I know they suck. I try and make it as balanced as possible so you're not watching too many ads. Most of them are you click on the button because you want to watch it and it gives you coins or whatever. So it was a really weird, unique way for us to make a little bit more money. Helps the free concealed carry classes. Every like once or twice a year, I find myself downloading a game. I was like, how come I don't fucking do this shit? And then
Yeah.
I fucking did this. I always uninstall the motherfuckers.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're fucking retarded for doing this shit. So I was like, why don't I do that? Well, instead of supporting other people, why don't I create the games? So go to our website, gfenational.com, and it's under games. It's under games. It's another way to kind of support us. Take a shit, play a game, watch a couple ads, and donate some money to us. I am trying to get it in iOS. So for those of you guys that are part of that fucking cult, Apple is the fucking worst thing in the fucking world. And I fucking hate them more and more every time. They make it very difficult to upload into their app store. A lot of shit that some of you developers, we can probably get into a fucking conversation about, but it's been a fucking pain in the ass. I can develop 17 fucking games, upload them to Google Play, no fucking problems. But with Apple, in the same amount of time, I can only get it into Xcodes and fucking work out problems in Xcode, and it's just all that to say, all you fucking Apple lovers, one, you're fucking weird for being an
Well,
Apple
if they're
lover.
Apple lovers, they don't need to play a game to donate. They can just send cash.
Oh yeah, you could just send cash, right? Because you're filthy fucking rich. Just send the fucking cash. What is it? The two memes. It's gay people and rich people that are Apple lovers. Often both. Because gay people are rich as fuck, man. My gay homies, you guys are on it. Just send the fucking money. I forgot. That's right. Just send us fucking money.
We do have some classes coming up, but more importantly, Tuesday, they are going to be doing the Senate committee hearing for the assault weapons ban. We need as many people as possible to show up, even if you don't get a chance to sign up to testify, which you should. But even if you don't get a chance, you can still show up and be a body in the building to resist.
To be clear, in case you're watching this in a year from now, this is Tuesday, the 28th, the 20th of January, 2025. So the 28th of January, 2025.
You sound like Rain Man for some reason when you say that.
Yeah.
And the hearing's at 1:30, and there will be people at the Capitol telling you where to go. So you don't even have to, all you got to do is find a parking spot and show up and walk in.
Usually they let you sign up to testify the day of.
Mm-hmm.
It's better if you do it before, though.
Also, be prepared that they're going to move the committee time, place, date. Like they like to play games like that. So just understand that. If that messes with your schedule, I'm sorry, freedom is inconvenient for you, but it's really important that we show up and be there. So also, we've got some classes on our calendar, and we will be making some changes as we move through the spring, but we do have classes up on the calendar right now. So,
yep. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the questions, all that stuff, the participation. To be clear, we don't play a political line. We like freedom. We're absolutist, and it's for everyone. So if you read something on Reddit that says otherwise, bullshit. Isaac and I are 100% about freedom, and we don't subject ourselves to the politics bullshit. And we believe freedom is for everyone, regardless of how Mexican you are. I appreciate